Thanks, Mike. So welcome to the international case studies. So what would a banker know about outstanding global property projects? Well, I have to fess up that I started out as an architect, excited about the big ideas of what makes cities great. But what I've learnt more recently, working in the field of sustainability, is the importance of measuring and communicating value creation. Value. It's a really interesting idea. We can measure financial value, and we're getting better at social and environmental value, but design value or beauty, it's a little more elusive. So today, I want to get under the hood of what makes a project great, what enables a project to stand the test of time, and what makes a project valuable and valued. So to help us with this conversation, I'm going to explore our projects in the context of some megatrends that we see emerging through the eyes of the CSIRO and Deloitte and many others. Some of these ideas include digital and virtual presence and the Internet of Things, changing demographics, specifically our ageing society, and the changing wealth distribution that we're now seeing. Pivoting from west to east and the rise of China, finite resources and the demand for eco-efficiency, and a real desire for experiences over simply acquiring products. So we're going to hear about 7 different projects, and I'd ask that after we have a discussion about some of those projects, you put forward some questions. We're not going to use the SMS for this session, given that we've got a lot of interaction with videos in this session. So let's get international and start in New York, on the west side, just at the northern end of the High Line at Penn Station. This is our first project from our sponsors, Brookfield Multiplex. So John, this is a complex project in its very early days. Can you give me a quick lowdown on some of the construction complexities of this project and how it might differ from some other projects we've seen construction over a railway line or railway station?
Yeah, look, as an engineer, of course, I get very excited by this kind of thing, and most of the audience will be familiar with Federation Square in Melbourne, and I'd describe this as sort of Federation Square on steroids. It's, Penn Station has the most train movements going in and out of any train station in the globe. So this is 24/7. So we're building a 1.5 hectare deck over the top of the most train movements in the globe. So it's a challenging project.
Mm. And in a city like New York, everyone has an opinion. And those opinions have been coming together more recently in really impressive and strong and local and very vocal communities. In some cases, they're powerful enough to create projects like the High Line. How did you manage to get a project like this approved and bring on board those opinions of New Yorkers?
Well, I think the High Line is a really great precedent, and for those who've seen it, the regeneration of an old above-ground rail line that's a wonderful tourist and local attraction used for arts and general entertainment, which terminates right next to this site. But what you've got is a disused piece of air over rail yards. There's not a lot of spare space in Manhattan, so unless you want to take a piece of Central Park, which probably wouldn't please the community terribly much, this is the kind of thing you need to do to create new development. So it's urban regeneration at its best, in my view. Mm.
Paul, that's an extraordinary project.
How cool is that, eh?
It's cool. Who paid for this? Who was the client? How does a project like this that contributes so much to the public realm actually stack up, especially in the challenged European economy?
Oh, look, I mean, the project was commissioned before GFC. Mm. In Spain, had a fair bit of cash in the bank, or thought they did. It was commissioned architectural competition, a bold vision. We need to do something to this important area of Seville. They went out to an international competition and had a very wide-ranging set of responses. And this response is effectively 6 shade structures. Mm. It's an archaeological museum underneath. There's a restaurant as well. But it's basically a shade structure for the public plaza. And so somebody had the vision that this area needed to be regenerated, and this might do it. It was government funded, or local government funded, and they toughed it out through GFC, found the money, and got it finished. And from what the locals say, we've just seen, they love it, and the area is revitalised. So I think in terms of piece of urban realm and regeneration, clearly it's been successful.
I mean, how does it pay for itself now in terms of its just day-to-day operations? And I'd imagine the upkeep on a project like that would be pretty significant.
Upkeep?
Yeah.
Look, upkeep of cities is pretty significant. Yeah. It's just a piece of cities, whether it's a swimming pool or a public park. So probably no more than that. And arguably, actually, I'm told that there's very little maintenance. The timber's been sprayed with 3 millimetres of polyurethane to keep the weather out of it, so it's probably fairly benign. But having said that, the way it draws people to that space, tourists and locals alike, I'd say the council thinks it's probably money well spent.
Dan, this is a project that's very much of its time and its place. It is big box retail, but it is on the international scale. Can you tell me a bit about what makes it so special?
Well, I think firstly creating an economic hub for the local community, and I think Singapore goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier around places and the governance of places wanting to ensure that their regions are internationally competitive. So this was what they describe as a white site development, which means that it's a highly competitive process to bid for the land. And when we looked at the project, we knew that we'd have to pay a relatively high price, but we backed ourselves from an integrated perspective, and what we mean by that is bringing in the funding, being able to design and develop, build, deliver, and ultimately asset manage in order to achieve the economic returns required, given the large price for the land we had to move very, very quickly to achieve. But in doing so, ensuring that we didn't just build a traditional mall, we were looking at pushing the boundaries on the green standards of Singapore, the green mark standards, it being the first mixed-use platinum scheme, replacement landscape design, so all the green space that was taken up has been replaced within the centre, so that the community can come in more comfortable conditions than the Singapore heat, but enjoy outdoor experiences. And that ultimately through the construction process, because the centre only opened last month, so we're literally in our 5th week of trade, the office that you see behind that opens in October this year, and all of it's fully leased. But through the construction process, ensuring that we deliver the project safely, which is a challenge in some Asian markets. And we have a philosophy that I'm sure others have, where notwithstanding local standards, you often hear people talk about, well, we know we've had accidents, but we perform better than anybody else in that market. Well, that's not good enough for us. We go in there saying we have an international standard for safety, and wherever we operate, we have to meet that international standard. So ensuring that we brought the project's delivery up to that kind of standard was also important.
So another project that comprises mixed use, public transportation, high dense, iconic city. I think we're beginning to see some themes emerge here today. Sanada, can you tell me a bit about what makes this project so special for you 10 years on?
10 years, yeah. Firstly, I'm very sorry that the short video is from 30 minutes video. It's the shortest. It's no explanation about all Lon Hills. And this Lon Hills, this year's 10th anniversary, opened in 2003. And but that project took 17 years. It's include construct 3 years, but purchase the land and the permission and the planning and include 17 years. It's a big project.
17 years from concept to actually opening the project.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's called patient capital.
Indeed.
Yeah, exactly.
Perhaps also if you can tell us just a little bit about Mori for those of us who aren't familiar with Mori.
What?
Mori, your Mori building.
Mori building.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. This Lon Hills is the biggest private redevelopment project in Tokyo. And you can see this, the site area is 11 hectares, and the former landowner is 400 people in the company. And we gathered and negotiated to 400 ownership, and one major TV broadcasting company is the Asahi TV company, and took around up to 10 years to negotiate. And finally, we grand opened in 2003. It's all about facilities, hotel, retail, residence, and biggest footprint office. And in 10 years, that project has big influence to neighborhoods. You know, it's the other new mixed-use complexes, Midtown, close to our Lon Hills. Also, it's a new National Museum close to Lon Hills. That's Roppongi area used to the night entertainment district before. But after Roppongi Hills, the Roppongi became changed. Business and art and culture is heart of Tokyo.
It's a huge project, massive scale. But aside from its scale, what sets this hospital apart? What makes it so different?
Like, there are two key things. One was the beginning and the procurement process that the government were actually quite brave in undertaking, which was a two-stage early contractor involvement process. So we were appointed through a bid phase, but just basically agreeing what our margin would be and what our cost of staff would be. And then it was effectively we became the agent of the state to work with the user groups and the design over a process of about a year before we locked in a lump sum contract and then proceeded under fairly normal terms. So that was really important in getting the outcomes and perhaps a fairly brave decision, but I'm a big advocate of that ECI process.
So you'd be encouraging governments to explore that approach?
Look for the right projects, absolutely.
It's a great project, and I love that line about the grittiness and shininess. You know, it does somehow capture the authenticity of what makes London, Paul. Tell me, how did you wrangle this kind of project on an old piece of massive infrastructure, you know, over railway lines? And surely this project was fraught with, you know, potential cost overruns and, you know, dealing with the fragility of the London, you know, tube and rail network. How did you deal with the risks, and how did you pull it off?
Oh, manage it. Get the right people at the table, and deal with things methodically, carefully, and also make sure we got the right budget. I mean, this is the station project was £2.5 billion. That's King's Cross and St Pancras International. That's a major piece of infrastructure that took probably 15 years to complete. So, like all pieces of major infrastructure, you know, it doesn't happen in a 2 or 3 year cycle. You know, you're doing it for the very long term.
So Dan, a really challenging project, urban regeneration, you know, of the toughest kind, remaking a former housing estate into a new community. Tell me about the vision.
This is probably one of the most complex projects we have globally, and we've been involved since 2007, and we've started building this year. The Haygate estate is an old rundown estate. There were some images of it at the beginning of the video, but that estate was only actually built 35, 40 years ago. And one of the conversations we had with Southwark Council at the very outset when we won the opportunity to develop the project was that 35 years ago there were a group of developers, probably at that time working for the public sector, but that makes no difference. They had a vision for this place, and you know, it involves 3,000 residential units, 25% affordable. And here we are 35 years later, and we're having to knock down what they created, all with their best intentions. So we really wanted to create something that would be the southern hub for London. The Elephant and Castle sits pretty much in central London on the south side of the river. All roads lead to it, and it needed to become effectively a beacon for the south, but a beacon that would last the test of time and would evolve over time with the community. And so we had to tackle how we could represent the new, but also respect the past, and obviously the affordable component, is a key part of that.
And I think to that point, some might call a project like this gentrification rather than regeneration. However, you've got some substantive requirements and also some commitments around affordable housing. What kind of community are you looking to create here? And how does a world-class project actually encompass affordable housing? It's not what people would ordinarily associate with a world-class project.
Well, I think what the last thing we want to do, in particular, the thing that makes London great is its diversity of affluence, its tolerance, and all of those things. And I think it, in many ways, is a showcase for what cities should be trying to achieve. And from a brand perspective, we can't afford to be here in 15, 20 years. And this is a 15, 20-year project. The two residential projects the team talked about, one the Elephant and Trafalgar Place, are going up now, but they are the first of what will be 11 or 12 development areas over the next 10 to 15 years. We effectively, ultimately need to ensure that what we create here will stand the test of time.